Chapter 158 Blue-Clothed Woman. When the young man saw this scene, he coldly laughed. "Since I've already received your attack, is it not my turn to attack?" When these words were spoken, he had already been protected by a barrier. He brought his hands together and suddenly drew a curved moon with his hands, causing a huge arc of azure light to appear from his hands. "Taste my azure arc shop," the young man said darkly. Then the disk of light shot out, whistling toward the two people across from him. This person's attack stirred up the crowd. Regardless of who was watching, the Morong brothers fundamentally couldn't resist this magic technique. They had no defense to speak of. The youngsters were alarmed and were at a loss. After glancing in every direction, they dashed to the left and the right, running into the crowd. "Open!" the young man suddenly shouted. Following the shout, the flying azure arc unexpectedly split into two by the young man's hand movements and immediately pursued the two youngsters. It just so happened that one of the youngsters saw that among the crowd, Han Li had the deepest magic power. As a result, he headed straight towards him without the slightest hesitation, immediately frightening Han Li. Han Li hadn't the slightest intention of involving himself in this matter. He knew that even if the young man was unbridledly savage, he wouldn't dare to brazenly injure the Morong brothers. At most they would be frightened and teased for a time. Thus, he absolutely didn't take the initiative to interfere. Even more surprising was that youngster was exceptionally cunning. For example, he wanted to use Han Li as a shield. But how could Han Li possibly follow the other party as they wished? As a result, Han Li's body flashed, disappearing from his original location. Then the youngster pounced into the air, angrily cursing in tears. With no better option, he frantically tried to flee. A rubbing sound came from the trembling ground, precisely from the direction in which the other youngster was running. Afterwards, dust blew in every direction, and the voice of a male cursing came from within. It was clear that someone was not as wise as Han Li and did not break away from his role as a living shield. After the dust dissipated, he saw a 10-meter tall, thick wall of earth marked with a half-moon grew several feet long. Behind the wall stood a coarse, short youth about 20 years old, carrying a strange wooden walking stick. With a wave of his hand, the wall created an opening. After that, he walked out with a cheerful Morong youngster close to him. "You with the surname Lu, what is the meaning of this? Did you not see that others were here? And you still actually attacked? Did you want to chop at him along with me?" the coarse, short youth asked, both angry and startled. Senior Marshal Brother Lu snorted and didn't pay notice of the coarse, short youth's reproachful question. Instead, he somberly operated his remaining half-azure arc blade and sped up its pursuit toward the youngster on Han Li's side. Having seen the azure arc's neutralization, he truly planned to not let the other youngster go. "Stay your hand." A young woman's delicate, scolding voice came from the sky. Then a raging blaze dropped from the sky, completely engulfing the azure arc chasing the youngster. The raging flames turned into a ball and disappeared. Who was it that broke my spell?" the young man surnamed Lu asked angrily, raising his head to the sky. Above everyone was a blue-clothed woman who had arrived at an unknown time. She looked to be a fairy with a garish appearance and skin, as if she had been congealed from fat. This woman's slim willow waist, beautiful jade neck, blue royal clothing, and tall styled hair caused people to look with a hesitant and venerable gaze. So it was Junior Marshal Sister Ni. I was actually asking who has such magic power. After seeing the blue-clothed woman, the young man surnamed Lu, who was originally in a rage, immediately changed his expression and warmly saluted her with elegant poise. "Elder Marshal Brother Lu, look at my face. Is this competition over?" the royally dressed woman coldly asked while stepping on a magic tool. He, since it is Junior Marshal Sister Ni's desire, then I will comply with the rules," the young man replied with a smiling expression. The royally dressed woman nodded and did not speak any further. She dropped from the sky and walked over to the Morong brothers. "Elder Marshal Sister Ni, your arrival was truly timely. Otherwise, we would have faced a disastrous end. The youngster who had just escaped calamity immediately ran over to the blue-clothed woman as soon as he saw her, grinning ear from ear. The other brother also grinned and hurried over from the earth wall. Return. Face the wall and ponder about your misdeeds. You are not allowed outside until after you've trained to the 9th layer in your cultivation art. The woman lightly said without a trace of anger. The slightest change in emotion could not be detected. When the Morong brothers heard this, they immediately became crestfallen. They both agreed and drooped their heads. After the blue-clothed woman finished taking care of the two brothers, she turned her head toward the coarse, short youth and unexpectedly burst into a smile, overshadowing all nearby life in an instant. She opened her small almond lips and said, "Many thanks for Senior Marshal Brother's assistance. Else this junior martial disciple Morong's mishap would have brought shame to this little sister's teacher." It was nothing. When the coarse, short youth saw the other party's gorgeous smile, he was stunned, foolishly giggling and stuttering between his words. When the males all around saw this preferential treatment, they could not help but be fiercely envious of this man's encounter with a beautiful woman. They all greatly regretted why they did not act a moment ago. As a result, they all gazed at the man with piercing gazes of envy. When the young man surnamed Lu saw this, malice flashed through his eyes, but he quickly concealed it and maintained his cultured and refined appearance. Apart from the female companion besides him, only Han Li, who was coldly looking on, seemed to notice this peculiarity. Although that junior martial sister Chen was an exquisite and ravishing beauty, dainty as a flower, her looks were far inferior to the woman surnamed Ni. Thus, when junior martial sister Chen saw the blue-clothed woman appear, she feared that senior martial brother Lu would become infatuated with her and immediately ran to senior martial brother Lu's side, grabbing the young man's arm. Afterwards she shot a hostile stare at the other party. The blue-clothed woman naturally felt the other party's ill will, but she didn't mind in the least. Instead, when she was about to leave with the Morong brothers, she faintly shot a glance at Han Li. Her beautiful voice immediately rang through his ear. "Although the magic of your esteemed self is not weak, this kind of chivalric behavior is truly disagreeable to this young woman. I hope that the next time I see you, junior martial disciple will somewhat change his ways." After Han Li heard the blue-clothed woman's words, he slightly wrinkled his brow. It seemed that she had completely seen through his evasive action. It did not leave this woman with a favorable impression and even left a rather bad impression. However, he wasn't a saint. To know fully well that someone was trying to exploit you and do not try avoid it, was that not idiocy? The coarse, short youth actually didn't have chivalry. However, he was currently being stared at by the fellow surnamed Lu. Perhaps the fellow would kill him in the future. If that moment came, would that beautiful woman even avenge him? Han Li thought this with a scoff. He did not know why, but Han Li absolutely couldn't stand this peerlessly talented beauty. He found pretty daughters of humble families to be much more pleasing to the eye. Thus he didn't care even the slightest what this senior martial sister Ni thought. He only hoped that she would not pay attention to him. At this moment, there was no trace of the beautiful, blue-clothed woman and her company. After senior martial brother Lu took a fierce glance at the coarse, short youth and departed from the mountaintop with his female companion, the remaining people had nothing left worth seeing and disorderly dispersed. Han Li departed on the flying magic tool and returned to the 100 Medicine Garden. After he entered his room, Han Li impatiently took out the 2 jade cylinders and looked at the duplicate containing the method to refine the foundation establishment pill. He began to carefully study it word by word. Although Han Li's mind was lively, his expression didn't change in the slightest. Several hours later, Han Li let out a long breath and put the jade cylinder down. Closely afterwards, he sunk into deep thought and reflection. After a long moment, he let out a deep breath and stood, tightly wrinkling his breath. He then walked into the medicine garden. He began to sweep his gaze over the plants within the garden, muttering to himself, "Thousand knotted flower, black peony grass, Gold essence ginseng and the 31 other complementary drug ingredients are of no problem. They are all in the garden. Only a few need to age considerably, requiring several hundred years of maturity. However, the most important medicines, chalcedony mushrooms, violet monkey flowers, and sky spirit fruit, are quite troublesome. They are unexpectedly not here. Furthermore, I've never heard of them before. Han Li hesitated for half a day before deciding to ask others. Naturally, couldn't he just ask the small old man, a medicine master?